Again, thank you for taking the time out of your evening to come speak to me. It's
Nah, it's okay. I'm sorry about the mix-up beforehand.
no worries. So I guess to start, for people that are unfamiliar with who you are, could you just give us a brief synopsis of where you started at to currently where you're at now?
So, I'm currently a first-year medical student at the University of Warwick. I'm doing graduate medicine at the moment, but it was quite a journey to get here. So, I applied for medicine first for the first time when I was in college, which is probably about 6 years ago or so. And yeah, I applied when I did during my A levels. And the thing is, at the time, like I knew I wanted to do medicine, but like the whole application process and stuff, I wasn't like clued in and everything. So what happened is that I ended up getting 4 rejections to the place that I applied to, but I had a place at the University of Exeter to do medical sciences, and they were offering a transfer to medicine course. So when I got my A levels, I didn't get 3 A's. I got AAB, but in my head I was like, I'm gonna go to Exeter and do the medical course, do the medical sciences and do the transfer. But at the time, I didn't really look at my options in terms of like other ways to get in foundation courses or possibly looking at courses that would take my grades as well. So I just went to Exeter. They're like, you need to do really well in the first year to transfer into medicine, to go into their 5-year undergraduate course. So I did well, and I got an interview, but I didn't get a place. I got rejected. So I was really disappointed because like I was now on this course that I literally basically went on just because of medicine. Like I didn't think that I wanted to, like I wasn't thinking I'm going to finish the course. I was very like, I'm going to go and I'm going to get onto medicine. Like that was like my mindset at the time. But it was annoying, and I was really like upset, and I was really like I just didn't know like where to go from there. But I just decided I was just going to continue with the medical sciences course. I got myself into the whole uni thing, and then I was considering graduate entry medicine. So now it's my final year, and I'm like, okay, I can now apply again. I'm going to try again for medicine. So I applied to 3 graduate courses and then 1 undergraduate, which was like semi-internal through my uni. So they said if you're predicted a 2-1 in medical sciences, you automatically get an interview. So the 3 graduate courses rejected me. I got no interviews from there. Got an interview with the University of Exeter, and I got an offer, but because I couldn't afford the the undergraduate course,
Yeah.
because the whole thing with once you've done one undergraduate degree, you can't they won't give you the student loans for another. And at the time it just looked really complicated, and I had other personal reasons that I just wasn't like, it just didn't work. So unfortunately I had to drop my application. It was really difficult, but I had to like let go of the application. I was like, okay, you need to start from scratch. So I then took a year out, and during that year out, after I had graduated, I worked in a medium secure forensic mental health unit, and then I applied for 4 graduate unis. I got 3 interviews and eventually a place
Wow.
at the University of Warwick. So yeah, I was so over the moon. Like I could not actually believe that I'd gotten 3 interviews for graduate medicine. Like I was so shocked. But I'm just so happy. And it was a really difficult journey. Like I remember there were times where I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I was like, oh, do you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. That like whole mental battle when you have the conversations with yourself is like, is this something I really want to do? And I really did want to do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stayed this long like applying. But I'm happy I'm here now. So that's pretty
No,
much
yeah,
everything.
yeah, and I can totally relate with starting back from the beginning with A levels. I think if you don't have that careers advice or those people telling you what options are there, you don't really know where to look. And as you said, even I can relate to that. I didn't know where to look at the time, if that be like foundation programs or access. We just got told if you want to go to uni, apply whichever uni will take your grades and pick a course that you like. And I think that does come down to a limited amount of information that some colleges or some high schools provide, and ultimately it's worked out for you in the long run. But I think it could have been avoided, not just you and me, but for a lot of students if they had the right advice at the beginning. Is that something that you could relate with?
Like I had like careers advisors at the time, like at the school and stuff. But I think a lot of it was to do with me. Like I just don't feel like I had like the insight, if you know what I mean. I don't
Yeah.
think I was mature enough. So yeah, I just was a bit. I don't know. I was just kind of clueless. And then when I did like yeah, so when I did apply and stuff, I was kind of like, oh, okay, like I was kind of like, oh, but I guess that was just kind of me being not unrealistic, but I was just not fully there.
Yeah.
But I completely understand. Like some colleges don't have the support or advice or anything at all.
Yeah, and I guess moving on to your two GEM applications, the first time when you got offered just one place on the undergraduate, I think it's a good balance because I was speaking to people that have done a degree and then gone and studied on an undergraduate course, but I guess ultimately it worked out for you. Is in the next application cycle you got three out of the four, which is a massive bump on and astounding to say that you actually got three interviews out of the four after 1 year. So I guess it begs the question on what did you do different from the first year to the second year? Because it sounds like you really improved yourself.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. It was, to be fair, like how do I start? I think when I was applying, I mean, even for undergrad, like I just sort of like wrote the application. I didn't like really understand. I didn't really deep like, my personal statement has to be a certain way, or I didn't understand like how to do my personal statement. I think that was one of the issues I had. Like even with when I applied for undergrad and when I applied for postgrad the first time, I just I didn't really know what to put in there, and I kind of struggled with that. And as well, like even though I like, especially during my degree, I had experience. I worked as a healthcare assistant. I'd shadowed. I'd done volunteering. I did societies as well, and like I kind of got involved, and I had all those elements, but I did not know how to draw from them in the correct way that will come out properly in my personal statement. And another thing as well was my UCAT. Like my UCAT was a massive factor actually in my undergrad. Um, like I did not do well in the UCAT at all. I had no clue that I had to like work. Like obviously I knew how to work hard for it, but I did not work hard enough in my UCAT and my undergrad. And I think a similar situation when I applied the first time for graduate entry. But what happened was I did the GAMSAT that year as well. The first time I applied, I was doing the GAMSAT that year, and my summer revising was just a mess. Like I couldn't balance the GAMSAT and UCAT prep at all. Like one day I'll be doing UCAT, one day I'll be doing GAMSAT. I was all over the place. I just had no organization, and the thing is, a lot of that was to do with the fact that I did not know how to go about the GAMSAT at all. I didn't. I wanted to do the GAMSAT to get into Nottingham, but I felt like there was just like nothing on there to show me how to do it. Like it was like the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. Like in terms academically, it is the most difficult exam I've taken, in my opinion. Some people may think otherwise, but personally for me, like the preparation, I didn't know what I was doing, and like in the exam was very long and it was tiring. But the thing is, some people really like the GAMSAT, and like honestly, I respect them because I didn't like it at all. And the thing is, what happened was that I neglected my UCAT preparation. So
Yeah.
my UCAT score wasn't like it wasn't like strong. Like, and the thing is, I think with graduate, they're quite specific. Unis are quite like specific with the GAMSAT. Like, I think some of the London you say Kings and things like that. They want like higher scores and some want slightly lower scores. But I just did. It wasn't my score wasn't quite there. But thing is, the score wasn't like a big issue because it wasn't like that. It wasn't that low. It just wasn't like there. Um, so I think that was another factor. So yeah, that in terms of applying the first time for graduate medicine, personal statements what they were looking at, experience, and they were looking at the UCAT, and I think my personal statement wasn't. It wasn't like the thing is, when I was writing it, me myself, I didn't fully think, oh yeah, this is strong. I just was kind of like trying to get the personal statement to a certain level, but it wasn't exactly how I wanted it when I sent it off. And yeah, I think that was it. It was that the UCAT score wasn't there because I was neglecting it due to my GAMSAT prep, and then my personal statement wasn't as strong as it could have been.
Yeah, and I guess as hard as it is, I think there's two parts of it. The first part, you've got to think of it as a numbers game. You've got to hit those numbers to ultimately get onto that second part, and that being the interview where you can actually show yourself. And as you just said, what I'm drawing from what you just said is it. You found it difficult to just hit those numbers. Obviously, once you got those interviews, you're ultimately there, so you knew how to show yourself on that second part. But I guess that's where most people fall down on the first part is, especially with the UCAT, as you said, with them just slicing the bottom 60% in some unis, and they don't even look at anything. They just say, you got below 2,800, you're gone. It's like, as brutal as it sounds, I think that's the two first hurdles that you have to get over, and it's honestly the same with every uni. I guess within your application, when you just sat the UCAT, how did you find the UCAT? Obviously, you must have done extremely well to get through interviews. So.
Yeah, thank you. Like the UCAT, the UCAT it's like one of those things where you know that you don't like it, but you've got to do it. It was like the better of the two evils. The GAMSAT or the UCAT for me, and I was like, I'm gonna go for the UCAT because I feel like I can master that better. So when I applied the second time round, the UCAT, I've always found it very tricky. Like first time I took the UCAT, second time I took the UCAT, really tricky, and I struggled to like grasp it. But I think the third time I took the UCAT, the preparation was different. I focused just on the UCAT. Like I didn't have any GAMSAT. I'd graduated from uni. I felt like there was nothing really like in the way. There was no like uni to get ready for. There was none of that. So I kind of just focused on my prep. I used a lot of Medify, and I like the fact that Medify was online, so I get like that online feel. So like before, when I'd applied, I'd use like books.
Yeah.
And mostly books, but to be fair, the year before when I applied the first time for graduate, I did use Medify, but I found out about it too late. Like I had no clue that there was any such thing as all these like resources online. So I started using Medify, and that really helped me with my confidence. And I used my UCAT 600 or I think 1,200 UCAT prep testing, and I quite like that. Like if I was like on the bus or anything or on the way to work, I just like go through that and like tick off and stuff, and write things in. And then when I was doing my prep on the computer, that helped. The UCAT this time, I found it, to be honest, it just goes by really quickly. It was tricky. And my worst section was the verbal reasoning section. It was, yeah, I don't like verbal reasoning. It's always been my weakest. So you know, that was a section I quite struggled with, but like I felt like I got a momentum during the exam, and I actually came out of there. I was really, really scared. I hadn't, to be fair, sometimes you have no, I had no clue how I'd done, but I thought, okay, that felt better than like the last two times I've done this exam. And yeah, I got the results and I was really happy. I did really well. But yeah, the exam is tricky, and it's definitely the key to the UCAT is practice. Like you have to practice loads. Like just keep practicing and try and research like resources as well. It's really important. Like I believe like don't just go for a resource because somebody said it's good. It's good for you to like, you know, just have a look at the different ones and assess for yourself. Okay, how do I want to revise for the UCAT? Like which preparation resource would be the best for me? So I guess, yeah.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And ultimately, with the UCAT, it's more of a sprint than a marathon. Obviously, you set the GAMSAT. The GAMSAT is an all-day exam. You need to be on point all day. So I guess with the GAMSAT, they can ask you a lot more questions. And ultimately, when it comes down to the UCAT, it's an aptitude test. So as long as you've revised how to answer the type of question, you can almost answer any variant of it. Did you
Yeah.
find that when you was preparing for these questions, you had like similar questions just keep coming up all the time, and you almost got to learn the pattern of the questions coming up?
So what I found with, especially with like the mathsy sort of sections and the decision making and like what's it called, the quantitative reason decision making and the abstract reasoning, I found that like especially with like the patterns will come up. So once I would write down patterns I'd seen, say in like the abstract reasoning, and like write down everything I've seen. Once I'd see if I get something wrong and there's a new pattern, I'd write it down. Like for instance, say if there's like a distractor, like sometimes they have like things in there that are meaningless. So like there's different types of distractors. So I started to write that down. I started to write down like every pattern I'd seen, and after a while, just by looking at it, automatically I'd like pick it up because it's like repetition. My brain kind of understands what each thing looks like just because I've done it that much. Verbal reasoning was actually like my highest section. Like it used to be like the section I did not like, but like practicing after a while, I began to see the patterns and just understand it. And the same with quantitative reasoning, which like I did better in my practices than in the exam. But I think it was that was kind of a nerves thing. But you eventually see like they're asking. It's a simple like GCSE maths that you have to apply to the questions, and the more you do, the more you can like the quicker you can pick up. Okay, this is what I need from the question. This is the things I need from the question, rather than trying to read everything. And yeah, and with decision making as well, like the same types of questions come up, but it's a different scenario, it's a different thing, but the techniques you use will be similar. And like after a while, I started to pick up like, okay, these things that they're asking are actually quite similar, but it's just like a different question. For some reason, my verbal reasoning, I've always struggled with reading comprehension and stuff, and like I struggle to. I find it really hard to scan, and my reading speed isn't like amazing. So that's why I struggle with the first section. But I'm sure if I continued and like practiced more with it and like had more time, like gave it more time, that I'd be able to pick up patterns. But definitely with the UCAT, it's all about repetition and learning tricks as well. There are some questions that aren't worth answering. Like the more you practice, the more you see like, okay, this question is going to take me too long. That's really important when it comes to like the quantitative reasoning, when you can see that like there's not that much time to calculate, and that like after a while you'd be like, okay, this question is taking me too long, move on. Like after a while, you know what needs to be skipped and what doesn't.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good point to touch on is how did you manage obviously the time element of the UCAT, because I guess that's half the battle of trying to
Yeah.
get your times down. Obviously, with the abstract reasoning, you could spend 10 minutes looking at this little diagram. So it's trying to get the timing down. How did you find? Obviously, I guess is that just down to repetition in getting your speed, or just setting your time limits and practicing it in I guess like a timely manner? Like how did you approach that?
So I decided when I first started off, like when I was preparing for the UCAT before, I'd go straight off time conditions, but I didn't do that. The first thing I did, to be fair, the first thing I did was take the diagnostic test on Medify, and I was like, I'm just going to take the diagnostic test. It was hard, obviously, because it was under time conditions, but I did it anyway just to see like where am I actually at. And when I started, it wasn't good. After that, I was like, do you know what? Just give yourself the time to answer the questions. Don't time yourself. And this was just for me to get used to what the questions were, get used to like understanding each section, understanding what each section is asking for, reading about each section, reading about the types of questions they ask for, the types of equations I need. So I kind of like was kind to myself in the beginning not to time myself. But I guess this is a thing that you can do, especially when you give yourself a long time to prepare, a longer amount of time to prepare for the UCAT. So like I just started off just like with the maths. If I wasn't understanding the topic, I'd go online and look for like GCSE math sheets and just answer a bunch of questions on speed difference time. speed, distance, time, just to get used to like the maths and stuff. And after a while, I let myself do that for like a week or two, and then after that, I just started to time myself, and just making sure I was doing it under time conditions. But yeah, at first I was kind to myself like, Issy, just learn the techniques first and learn how to answer the questions before you start timing yourself, because I didn't want to stress myself out. I just wanted it to be not too much of a hectic revision period. So when I did start timing myself, it was difficult. It always is difficult, but it gets a bit easier when you know how to apply the techniques. And repetition is really important, because the more you do it, the quicker you will get. And the very important thing is to like triage and eliminate and guess and like eliminate answers that you don't think. There's times where you like eliminate answers you know are definitely not going to be the answer, then you pick 50-50 if you're running out of time. So you like learn different techniques to like tackle the time, as well as repetition to do the calculations quicker.
No, yeah, I totally agree with that. I guess when you mentioned your revision plan, how long did you, or how long would you recommend taking out to actually just just solely focus on revising for the UCAT? Because I guess a lot of students this year will finish a bit earlier with their university due to it all being online. So how long would you say a typical student would need to just solely dedicate to the UCAT and get that boxed off before their exam?
Oh, this is difficult, because I'm basing it. I'm gonna base it off myself, but I think that to be fair, I feel like 2 months is a good amount of time. About 2 months, or if you like, it depends on the kind of learner you are. Like I know that I've done I've had experience of the UCAT before, so I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. So I gave myself around, I think I did like, can't remember now, but I think it was like around 8 weeks or so revise. I think 6 to 8 weeks or so doing the UCAT prep. But like that was with knowledge, like I'd already done the UCAT twice before in my life. But if you've not done the UCAT ever before and it's brand new, I recommend starting earlier, like maybe about 3 months or so. Or like, I feel like it's just, I don't know, I feel like the sensible thing is to give yourself as much time as you can, but also not too much time that you become burnt out and like get tired of the UCAT. So yeah, especially if you're someone that's not seen the UCAT before, I recommend, even if it's just like starting to read around it and understanding, going through maths and making sure you're up to date with your maths and everything. I think it's important. But for me, I gave myself like almost 2 months to do the UCAT, but that's also with knowledge of the UCAT previously.
Perfect, thank you. And I guess moving on to your interviews, you scored 3 interviews out of the 4. So one was Warwick, and then where were the other 2, if you don't mind me asking?
Warwick, Birmingham, Southampton.
Wow, so presumably they were all changed this year due to COVID, or did you sit them just before COVID?
I did my interviews before COVID, so they were all in person. Yeah.
So were they all MMIs, or did you have any like traditional interviews?
I had MMI, 2 MMI. So that was last year not even last year anymore, 2019 in December. I had MMI for Warwick and MMI for Birmingham. And then in the February last year, I had a panel interview and group interview with Southampton. So it was panel, and then we had a group task afterwards.
So I guess it begs the question, if we were talking about MMI interviews, how did you find them, and is there any way you particularly like prepared for the style of MMI questions?
So my I used do you know what I used quite a lot of was the interview, with the Get Into Medical Schools interview book. So I used that to like, have like, it has like a bank of questions, and it gives you like, like a framework of how to answer the questions. So like, for example, like the star method to answer, like, tell me about a time where you showed good leadership, and then you have like the situation, task, and then so on and so forth. So like I use that book to like give me an idea of how to like approach certain questions. But I also like made like a mind map of like, okay, like I made a mind map of all the things I've done. I read my personal statement, and then sort of like just like started to like say, okay, your skills and qualities, your strengths and weaknesses. So and then like I highlighted my motivation to do medicine as well. So I made sure like I sort of like understood myself and like got to know myself, because of course like when you're doing your life and stuff and like you've submitted your application, you forget about it for a bit, and then the interview comes, you're like, oh, okay, now I need to like get into like application mode again and read my personal statement, make sure I know everything that's on there, and like just like making sure I got to know myself when I got the interview, just making mind maps and stuff and making sure I knew my personal statement. And then I sort of like did practicing with like my family. So I'd tell them to interview me, and then I just like give like answers, and then they tell me, oh, okay, this is how you sound. Maybe you should add this to what you're saying. So I think it was good that I gave myself a chance to like speak out loud. It's all well and good making notes. I did make notes for like, certain points I wanted to address and examples of things I'd done. But it's always good to like say it as well, so you know how you sound, and so you know that you can articulate yourself. Because at the end of the day, the interview, they're going to be speaking to you, and you're not going to have like, your points on the notes, and they're going to be hearing what you say. So I was just making sure that, I flowed. I did not wrote to learn at all, because I feel like that would have gotten me in like a really closed, I don't know, like, what, say like you learnt your lines for like a play and then you forget them, then you get stage fright. I did not want to be in that position. What I did is that I learned about myself. I've got certain scenarios in my head. I had certain points in my head, like times where I was a good leader, motivation to do medicine. Like I knew those things, but I didn't have like a word for word script, just so that when it came and if I got like nervous or if I had a hiccup, that I wouldn't get stage fright. I just was terrified of that happening to me. So I just wanted to go in with an open mind. So that's why I didn't rote learn at all. So preparation, it was quite hectic as well, doing it whilst I was working. I was working like 9 to 5 Monday to Friday at the time. So obviously you come back from work and like I was shattered. But I had to prepare for this interview. I think they gave me around like 2 weeks or less, just under 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks, man. 2 weeks. I remember I was like, oh my goodness. And then obviously I had to like ask permission from work to like let me off. So it was just a lot. But yeah, that was how I prepared. A lot of it was like calling people, speaking to my siblings, speaking to my friends, like articulating myself, talking to myself in the mirror, recording what I'd said as well. So like I'd record what I say, and then just play it back to myself. I'd record myself talking and like, Issy, like, are you like, how do you look and how are you expressing yourself? I don't know. I guess it was nice to actually hear myself speak. Do I sound confident? Does what I say make sense? So that's pretty much how I prepared.
So yeah, and it sounds like you didn't do so much preparation on the key skills that you needed to know for it, etc. But it was more about coming across as yourself, like I guess not sounding, as you said, like robotic or not sticking to a script. Did you do any like preparation for? I guess the hardest thing with the MMIs is the role playing aspect. So did you do any preparation for that? Obviously, I've had a few people on that have had some really good points on how they prepared for the role playing aspect of the interview. So how did you like approach that style of question?
I used at home I used like my family members again when it came to role play. So I just give them different scenarios to do. Like my mum, for instance, I'd give her a scenario to do, and then like I'd like try and say if she was upset, I'd console her, or like trying to break bad news. So my approach was like I'd try and do it, and then she'd give me feedback on how I'd come across, and how I made her feel. As for instance, like if it was a real situation and I was trying to console her, I was trying to like, I don't know how to explain it, but she'd give me feedback on if she was the patient at the time or if she was that person, how would she feel if I spoke to her in that way. So I think a lot of it was practicing with people, but also I did it by myself as well. Like I like make up a situation in my head and like talk to myself and be like, okay, if you're in this situation, how would you express yourself, or what would you want someone to say to you, or what do you think a healthcare professional would say to me? So the thing is, it's quite difficult to prepare for role plays, especially when you've not, like, if you've never been in one before. So that was my method. And I, as well, like, I guess a lot of that comes with you being yourself in the role play as well, because they're not trying to assess anything like extravagant, like whether all the blood vessels coming out of the heart or something like that. They just want to know, like, that you can be empathetic, that you can communicate, that you have those skills. So I think I tried not even, I was worried about role plays, to be honest, because it was one of those things that you don't know what they're going to throw at you. But I read what's it called? The book I was using, the interviews book. They had they had quite a few like pointers in there as well that I used, which I can't remember, but they had quite a few things that I'd like taken from them. Like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna implement that. That's quite a good skill to have, and that's quite a good thing to say. So I did as much research as I could when it came to role plays, like searching online as well, because it's one of the things that you don't know what they're gonna do. So I tried as much as I could to prepare myself for anything. And I think one thing you do is like try and go in as open-minded as you can for the role plays, because it could literally get anything. So I tried to have like an open mind so I wouldn't be so shocked when I came into a role play.
No, yeah, and I totally agree with what you said. And so some people have said it's best to have that like systematic approach of say you're breaking bad news, or you're having to let somebody down. It's having that systematic approach of knowing how to break bad news or knowing how to let somebody down. And once you know how to do it to one person properly, you know how to do it to, I guess, almost anybody. So I guess, would that be one point of advice that you could back on, knowing the basic processes of obviously how to break bad news correctly, but then I guess also the caveat to that would be not to sound like a robot, not to sound like you're following a script again.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. With the interviews, I forgot to say, you need to make sure that you have those basic frameworks. So when it comes to like breaking bad news, like you need to know like the basics of doing it, so that when you come into a situation, you can, and but at the same time, not to sound robotic, like you said, because also like having a conversation, like the basics of if they're saying something, allow them to express themselves, like let them talk, listen to them, repeat what they say. And like silence is okay sometimes as well, even if there's like a short pause, that's fine if you're breaking bad news. And not giving all the information at once, so one piece of information at a time. That's important as well. So like if you have those things, if you have that knowledge in your head, like knowing how to do it, the system of the way to do it, and like even with any interview question, like I said before, oh yeah, tell me about a time when you showed good leadership. You have that the STAR method in your head, like having all these things, know your ethics as well. You do not go into a medical school interview without knowing your 4 pillars. Don't know it, because it's almost guaranteed that will come up in the interviews, honestly.
Yeah, and I guess so. Looking back now, is there anything you wish you would have known before you began your degree as a med student? I guess getting into the nitty gritty.
Whoa. Okay. So I wish that I knew about Anki. I didn't really know much about Anki before I came into uni. I just was like, I was using my knowledge of, you've done medical sciences, and also after a year, my brain, like I had like a year of like no academics. After the UCAT prep, that was it. I was just working the whole year. So when I came into the degree, my brain was like mush. And then and then I came in, I didn't really know how to like work. Like I had like my methods from undergrad, which was just like take notes and just all over the place. But now I wish I knew Anki. Like I wish I did Anki from the get go. And if you don't know for those of you who don't know what Anki is, it's basically like an active recall revision card software. So it kind of spaces out so it spaces out the revision card. So you repeat it over a period of time. And what happens is that because you've been actively recalling it, your brain just absorbs the information. But I wish I started with Anki cards from the start. That is one of the things I wish I knew, honestly, because there's so much content, and I wish no, obviously I knew there was a lot of content, but I wish I didn't underestimate the amount of content you get in first year GEM. There's a lot of content. It's not like this. Like some of the concepts are like really, really hard. Like the neuro stuff is really interesting, but some of the concepts are hard. But I think the main difficulty with it is there's a lot of content, and you just have to find a way to sort of eliminate certain things and like learn certain things. So I know I'm not going to know every single thing, but if I know everything broadly, that's the most important thing. But yeah, I wish I knew about Anki. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah, you're the second person that said it, and I can ultimately say once. I don't know. I can't remember who I found Anki off. It was probably like Al Bilal or somebody on YouTube. One of the, if you want to call it, productivity genies are. But Anki from year one of my degree up to now has just been a lifesaver. We've hit. Everybody says, "Oh, active recalls, doing flashcards," and you're like, just get Anki. You'll never go back. Just try it. Just try it. And it's
oh my god.
I can vouch for Anki as well. I guess when you mentioned the breadth of the course, obviously there's not with medicine you don't go into so much detail as I found out. It's just the breadth of the information that you need to know. How have you ultimately found that adaptation from your previous degree to currently the degree that you're studying now?
So medical sciences was like, it was quite detailed. Like we had to go into like the cell processes, going into like the different protein. Like it was quite detailed. But with this, we're not going into as much detail, but there's a lot. And I'm finding that the content is definitely a lot more. It's definitely a lot more. And I feel like some of my medical sciences knowledge has helped, to be honest. Like everything is not completely brand new, but there are new things. So, for instance, we do things on like the kidneys, which I've done before on my degree, but this is different because now I'm learning the anatomy. So I'm learning like where it is in the body, and like the anatomy is quite new to me, to be honest. The pharmacology, there's like a lot of drugs to learn. Well, we're doing a pharmacology this year, and we have like drugs lists, and there's a lot of those to learn as well. I'm finding that it's just the workload is definitely more. And the thing is, when I was doing medical sciences, I thought, this is quite a lot of workload, but this is more workload. this is more work. But the thing is, it is like, especially the anatomy, I'm finding it really interesting because it's something that I've not learned before. Whereas like with the cell stuff, not all the physiology, but with certain things, the things I already have come across before, I find that I'm not as interested as I am with when it comes to like the brand new anatomy stuff. Like I really enjoy anatomy. That's like my favorite. If I didn't make it obvious already, but that's what I like the most. But yeah, I'm definitely finding that the content volume is a challenge compared to my undergrad. Definitely.
Yeah, and with that, how do you feel like, obviously, you've made it now, you're there, so obviously the competitiveness of even more competitive in the fact that you're in a previous degree that offered the transfer onto medicine. So obviously, most people wanted to, I guess, ultimately
Yeah.
study it. How do you feel the competitiveness of everybody trying to hit those high grades, say first or 2-1, is translated onto your degree now? Obviously, everybody's made it. All you need to get now is 40%, and you've all passed. So, how do you feel like the competitiveness has shifted from your previous degree to now?
So my previous degree, the first year was very competitive because pretty much so many people wanted to like go in, and it just had this like the environment was just a bit like people just wanted to transfer, and that's fine because they offered that, so it was quite competitive. But after that, it kind of like died down. To be honest, I'm not really at Warwick, I'm not really feeling it that much. And I don't know whether that's to do with the fact that everything's online and I've not really met the whole cohort. Um, like, even in my CBL group, my case based learning group, like, there's not really much, like, there's no competition, like, there's not really much competition, to be honest. We all sort of just, like, get on with the work. We all sort of want to learn. And even with my clinical skills group as well, I feel like everyone's supportive of each other. We all just want to learn and we all want to help each other. But to be honest, that's just me going off like the few people that I've met on the course. Like because of like the pandemic, we've not been able to meet as a whole cohort, and like we're pretty much within our group. So at the moment, I'm not really feeling it, but maybe it will kick in soon. I don't know.
No. I guess it comes down to Warwick's very unique in that it's all graduates. I'm presuming everybody knows that, but I guess it's all to the fact that all you guys have made it now. You guys are all there, as I said previously. All you need to do is hit those pass marks, and you're all going to be doctors. And I guess ultimately everybody's going to help each other because nobody wants a bad doctor in the NHS at the end of the day. So
Exactly. Like the competition, to be fair, like you said, I don't really see why there should be competition, especially within med school, because we're already here and we're all going to be doctors. And like I feel like even with the grades thing, like it's not like it's all like I don't know how to explain it, but it's not really. I don't feel like there should be a toxic like environment in med school because we've all done so much to get here. Like we just kind of need like peace, you know. After all that stress, you really want to like stress over competition? No way, no way.
and I guess moving it on, is there any like particular myths or like misconceptions that you thought were like stigmatized throughout med schools before you ultimately got there?
Stig, you mean like stigmas in med school, like in general?
So I guess a few previous ones that we've had is like you have to be super smart or super intelligent
Oh
to
my
go to med
gosh,
school or
no.
like an elitist degree, etc.
No, I think that like that is it's not all true. Like you don't have to be like a A star student to like do well in med school. And the thing is, like like I to be fair, I did quite well in school. Like in my GCSEs, I got good grades. I got like A stars, A's and B's. And in my A levels were good as well, AAB. And then, like, the thing is, yeah, I've done well academically, but it does not mean that you have to be a certain type of person to get into med school. Like, I know people even in my CBL group, there's people that work in like finance, there's people that would do music, there's people that was like doing all sorts of things, and they're not like, they're not like the traditional scientists, but they do really like they know like seeing them clinical skills, they really know what they're doing, they know how to communicate, and they're learning the content. At the end of the day, a lot of being a doctor, a lot of it is about how you interact with people. Like, yeah, like learning content, everyone learns in a different way. Just because you're not getting like the like incredible like straight A stars, it does not mean that you won't do well in med school. It just means that you have a different way of learning, and med school teaches you that. Like me, I'm like I'm struggling with the content, and people consider me to be smart. Like it has nothing to do with how intelligent you are. It's just like how you tackle it at the end of the day. And to be honest, like yeah, I think the stigma is, it's not true. Like, you don't have to be a perfect certain type of person to come into med school. Like, even with me, like like, you think that certain personalities, you know, suit med school, certain like characters or people have got this, like, you know, professionalism sort of like idea that people have to act a certain way to be med students, or people have to do certain things, but it's not true. Like, I feel like a lot of it, something that's really important is you being yourself. And that was one thing I'm a big advocate for, is like being yourself, because at the end of the day, when you're on a ward and when these patients aren't going to be like, not every patient you meet is going to be like, I don't know how to call it, but like the model patient. Like, everyone is from different backgrounds. Everyone is completely different. Like there's people, you're going to meet a massive range of people. And like, that's what I feel like, when you're yourself, you can relate better with the patients. You have to be, at the end, I believe that you have to be a person, you have to be a human being at the end of the day. Because like, from my experience, I was I got a bit sick last term and I was in hospital for a couple of days, and I'm telling you, like, those 5 minutes that you spend with the doctor are so important. Like, I remember just waiting for the doctor, and like, when they came, like, it's so important. And you want to be able to engage with the patient. Like, as a doctor, you might not realize that because you're doing it all day, you're moving on from patient to patient. But for that patient, that 5 minutes or so you're spending with, or 5 to 10 minutes, is so important. So you have to be relatable at the end of the day. You can't like, you have to try not to be robotic, even though it is difficult, especially if you've been there 12 hours or so and you're knackered. But like, I think personality is definitely important. I don't think a certain type of person does well in med school. I think anyone can do well in med school. You have, like, in my opinion, any personality can. Yeah.
I can totally relate to that, being like, personally myself, being a student that did okay in high school, flopped his first year of A levels, and then went on to study a BTEC, and ultimately had to work extremely hard to get some good grades to go into uni. But now it's the fact of, I guess it's the way in which you mature over time, and ultimately I feel I've matured enough to ultimately being successful in uni and hitting these top 10% marks. And I guess going back to what you said at the beginning, is not everybody's ready to dedicate a lifelong career at 18. Like, it's a big decision looking back at it.
Yeah.
And even though it's 3 years ago, it feels like a lifetime. Like, 3 years ago, I was supposed to decide what I wanted to do when I'm 60 or ultimately 70 years old. So I can completely like sympathize and relate to most people that study graduate entry, and obviously their story and ultimately getting there. I guess, moving on to Warwick specifically, how do you feel with such a long and like strenuous course? How do you find the time to plan for like rest and like self-care, if that be like societies or like sports, etc.? Is it as easy to manage? Well, probably not, and COVID has probably changed it. But how do you find like time management within that, from your previous degree to now?
Oh, there's definitely a lot more going on. So it's definitely harder. And I'm going to be honest and say that I'm still learning the balance. Because there's often times where I spend like so much time working, but I'm like, Issy, you need to do like your self-care stuff. And then my self-care takes then like ages, because I'm like over self-caring. But yeah, like, it has been difficult, but I think I'm starting to like slowly like find the balance. I'm getting there little by little. So like, you know, right now, you know, I've got like a YouTube channel and stuff which I'm trying to balance, and then I've got like a society I'm doing as well. So I was doing a sport, but like I barely got to do it because of because of COVID. So it has been more difficult to balance, but I'm trying to find ways around it. So like, I'm trying to like work until a certain time in the evening, and then in the evening onwards, I'll have that time for myself. But then obviously like that's not always realistic. Sometimes like maybe my sleeping pattern as well is an issue. So like maybe I'll wake up around like 12 p.m. and I'm like, oh, Issy, now you're going to be working until later on in the day. So I'm trying to get myself more disciplined. And I think the main thing I'm going to do is sort out my sleeping pattern, which I'm trying to do is going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time will make a lot of difference in my productivity and being able to balance. So yeah, it's difficult, but it's getting there.
Yeah, totally. And I guess what does a week look like now at Warwick Med School? Obviously, COVID has probably changed most or all of that, but I guess a good follow up question to that as well would be, how do you feel like they've adapted to COVID and everything going online?
So a typical week is Mondays. We usually have our at 9 a.m. We usually have like our welcome to the week session, and staff like the professors and lecturers run that, and it's quite nice. It's like a little bit of motivation, like get ready for the week, and we have like a patient of the week thing as well. So a patient usually comes on, and we can ask them questions and stuff, and then they talk about their condition. And then after that, and on Mondays as well, we have our CBL, which is our case-based learning, where we go through patient cases and sort of like try and find diagnoses and apply our learning from the week and stuff. And then we have 3 CBL sessions a week. So we have another one on Thursday, then another, and like another shorter session. And also between that time, we have like our self-paced sessions. So these are like pre-recorded lectures and workbooks that we have to pace in our own time during the week. And then we get weekly tasks. We always get tasks given at the beginning of each week as well. And then on Fridays, we have our anatomy and clinical skills days, which is basically where we get showed pro sections. And like, I quite like it. Before we used to have it in person, but because of COVID, unfortunately, they've had to put that all online as well for the time being. And we have our clinical skills as well. So yeah, with the week, like my main issue is like to be fair, where I'm struggling is the self-paced stuff, because it's not a scheduled time and because things are online, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm struggling to engage with the online learning. I think, looking back to like my previous degree, it's not like I went to every single lecture, but like you still get like the campus experience. Like, a part of the reason you go on campus, oh yeah, I'm going to see these people, to like see some of my friends on campus today, or even just go in and sit in a lecture with your friends. It's like, it's quite nice, and it keeps you like motivated because you have something to look, like, I felt like I had something to look forward to. And with this, it's a bit difficult because it's like, especially now we don't have the Friday clinical skills. I don't know. I'm trying to find different ways to like adapt. To be fair, it's starting to get better, but then as well, since we've not been able to get our face to face, my motivation kind of dipped. But I'm trying to like find different ways to do it because yeah, hopefully the only thing is hopefully like maybe not next block or maybe next term we'll be able to have some face to face, but it's difficult.
Yeah, I think that's most people's opinion. Well, across the country, is that face to face learning is mostly better for most people. However, I guess it is just adapting to the change and having everything. Again, some universities have done it very well, who I've spoken to, and some universities have done, I don't want to say a terrible job, but they haven't adapted as well. How do you feel Warwick has adapted throughout COVID?
To be honest, I think that Warwick has done the best that they can. Like, the thing is, there's so much. There's only so much they can actually do with everything being the way it is. So like even the things that they do on Mondays, the 9 o'clock welcome to the week, like they don't have to do that, but they do because I feel like that's one of the ways that they're trying to like motivate us and push us. And the patient of the week thing, I quite like that as well. And also like they do have like online, like people that you can speak to if you're struggling. They have online drop-ins, and things like that. So they are trying, but of course, like sometimes even with that, it's still difficult. It still can be difficult to engage because everything you do to communicate with somebody is on Teams.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, oh gosh. But yeah, I think they're doing like it's confusing for everyone, isn't it? Like no one really knows like what's going on. And to be fair, we're not sure. We've not been told yet when our face to face if our face to face teaching will resume next block, but hopefully we'll find out sometime soon.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So moving on for future medical students watching this video, are there any like golden piece of advice you'd give someone like starting out with their application process?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. Make sure that you do your research. Like I cannot stress how much that would have made a difference to my application, especially the first time. Because what I did was like I just applied. I didn't really think, is my UCAT score actually strong enough for this university? Like for me, it's like as long as I've done the UCAT, I can just put it in. Like to be honest, I think research gives you more insight into what you're doing, and just making sure that you know exactly where you're applying for. You're tactical as well. I think for me that is a golden rule. Like if you anything you do, just make sure you do your research, and with research comes being tactical, knowing how your score will play or how your application will do. And also, if you're going for work experience, don't just do like the online work experience for the sake of it. Like when you're doing it, make sure that you're reflecting and always questioning, do I still want, is this something I'm still considering? And making sure that you're learning from that as well. Because I think one thing I found is that I kind of just went, but I didn't really fully like reflect on everything. So I think that's really important, is do your research, make sure you know like about the unis, what they're looking for, so you know that when you're applying you've hit the marks.
Yeah, totally, and I totally agree with that, especially the applying strategically. And information is power. You know what university expects of you, and you apply to your advantage. If you have a good UCAT score, you can apply
Yeah.
to the London universities. But if you don't have such a good UCAT score, then there's still universities that you can apply for that look more heavy on, say, your personal statement or the interview, for example. So I totally agree with
Yeah.
that. I guess, and finally, for somebody starting out their first day at Warwick, what would be your take-home tips for that student?
My take home tips. First tip will be try and enjoy the moment as much as possible. Like if it's if you're starting off, like try and enjoy it as much as possible. Don't worry, don't stress too much about the work as well. I think from the get go, some people like give yourself time to get to know people and socialize as well, because that's an important part of medical school. It's not just about like the academics. I think an important part of it is like trying to get people to know people as much as you can in a pandemic within guidelines. So I think that's important, because like those connections you build with people can help you. Like even now, like having friends on my course, like if I'm struggling with something, I know that I have different people to go to, and like people I can like ask questions and they can ask me questions. And I think it really goes a long way in med school, like bouncing ideas off other people. Like I can't stress it enough. It's very important. So like I think that's one thing I'd say. And also Anki. Learn about Anki. You don't have to use it. Like obviously try it out, but from the get go, if you can start out trying Anki, I don't think you'd regret it. Like I'm telling you, that's my academic tip, is either like active recall. It doesn't have to be Anki, but active recall. I think I'm starting to learn that's the key. So
Perfect.
those are my few tips, and yeah, getting to know people as well. Socializing is an important part.
Perfect. Thank you. Again, I just had to say, massive thank you for taking the time even to come speak to me. It's not ideal being on a Sunday, so thank you very much for your time.
No, it's okay. No, thank you.
And I guess finally for our viewers, where can they find you online if they get any other questions, etc.?
I am on Instagram, which is Issue the Medic, and also on Facebook, Issue the Medic, and my YouTube channel is Issue the Medic as well. And you can drop me an email as well at issuethemedic@gmail.com. So it's all Issue the Medic.
Perfect. Thank you for your time again, Izzy.
No worries.
Thank
you for having me.
Take care.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.